Digimon Seekers Chapter 3, Part 4. The crew painted the name, however temporary, of the company across the door of the warehouse they'd made their factory. Ryusenji Electronics. The factory itself was located in the Denrin district and due to be leveled for redevelopment, but they'd negotiated a contract to make use of the place in the meantime. And that does it, Saya said, affixing the company's nameplate to the mailbox. Tokyo University of Electrical and Computer Engineering, Ryusenji Laboratories. The university's name, at least, had been finalized. Tokyo University of Electrical and Computer Engineering? So, Tokyo Electrical? Saya said, trying to coin a nickname right away. Sounds like a power company. Tokyo Computer U? Yulin laughed as she offered her take on the name. Denrin District's construction began with the relocation of universities, research facilities, and other public institutions. Once those were established, private businesses would be drawn in, followed by retail facilities and high-rise apartment buildings. New subway systems, highways, and other infrastructure would be built as the district took shape in order to best serve its needs. Within 10 years' time, it would be complete, and Tokyo would have a shiny new district. Denrin would house several special wards built to attract people in capital from all over the world. It was a surefire way to create a more diverse, multicultural capital. You seem pretty happy these days, Professor. How could I be anything but? I'm the proud owner of my very own business, and the mountain of debt I took on to do so, but never mind that right now. It was debt that Saya wouldn't necessarily escape either. Tomonori launched Ryusenji Electronics with a mix of the university's venture capital, various government funds, and his own money. He'd agreed to shoulder a substantial amount of the financial burden, even if it had all been approved by committee. This kind of research takes a lot of cash, Yulin said with a sigh. The servers and other machinery had to run 24 hours a day and guzzled electricity like water. Well, Dad, the professor, will dictate the direction of our research. I know he won't give us that kind of control. He also happens to be the only one who truly understands all this digital world stuff, anyway, Yulin noted. There was an entire world out there on the network, just waiting to be studied. Daydreams and taxes weren't going to be enough to fund the research required. Attracting the necessary funding required a pitch, bringing together threads from across disciplines, from autonomous AI to bleeding-edge VR development. Neither were easily transformed into sustainable businesses, but Tomonori needed them to advance for the sake of his own research. Everyone at Ryusenji Laboratories knew just one thing for certain. The little AI creatures they'd discovered on the network were about to unlock something significant for humanity. The Ryusenji Electronics offices were housed in one room of a former factory, with, at last, a separate server room. The room itself was far more spacious than their previous laboratory, even if the venture deal hadn't given them quite enough money to build a welcoming lounge, hire reception staff, give employees free meals, or any other fancy benefits. Behold, an experimental external storage device designed to record the actions of AI life forms, the Digital Monster Dock System, Assistant Professor Ryusenji bellowed as he unveiled his new gadget prototype. Digital monsters, eh? Yulin said with a slightly puzzled look. The Digimon Dock, for short. It's a mouthful, I know, Saya offered. It looks like a toy, came Yulin's unvarnished assessment. It was smaller than a deck of playing cards and sported a monochrome LCD display with some basic controls just below the screen. It's not exactly something we're going to turn into a product. The professor needs his hobbies, Kosuke said coolly. Indeed, Tomonori was something of a gadget fiend, and he had the stash of antique mobile phones, retro game consoles, and other electronic junk to prove it. He and Kosuke were the brain trust of the group, and mostly stuck to the roles they'd carved out for themselves. Kosuke was a natural when it came to programming, while Tomonori was a fine electrical engineer. That's exactly it. This could very well be the next innovation in the toy business. It could be a device that helps people feed and raise their beloved digital pets, Tomonori said to his captive audience. We've never had a way to keep and raise these digital monsters for very long. They're fragile creatures that perish quite easily after all. Which got me thinking, is something about our network environment putting undue stress on them? What if I made something as close as possible to their natural digital habitat? That became the design ethos for this device, keeping these AI critters alive. Tomonori's enthusiasm for research always turned into something of a one-man show, and these shows managed to run longer than any university lecture Yulin and company had ever endured. At least they were never boring. Tomonori's enthusiasm and flair for finding the hope along the way always shone through. He was a researcher first, but he had the heart of a dreamer. He carefully laid out a world in which kids raised these digital monsters as pets. One where Digimon became, in his words, humanity's irreplaceable companions. Humanity's irreplaceable companions, Yulin said slowly, turning the concept over in her mind. She was infatuated with the idea, but it felt dangerous somehow. Yulin had a knack for running ideas to their logical conclusion, making note of all the potential pitfalls along the way. "Ta-da!" Saya chirped, holding her hands out to Yulin. Cradled within them was a Digimon dock, and Yulin could see something on its tiny screen. She bent in for a closer look. "Is that an egg?" Yulin asked cautiously. "Yep. We're calling it a digitama, short for digital tamago. We thought it sounded a bit cuter to use tamago instead of egg." "A digitama? Okay," Yulin said, trying to keep up. "We found the data for this one while we were out exploring on the net," Saya said, vibrating with delight. "And the dock allows us to see a virtual representation of its actual form, not just a series of numbers," Tomonori chimed in. "This is incredible," Yulin shouted. "Hang on. Did I just see it move?" Kosuke asked excitedly. "Is it going to hatch?" Tomonori squeaked, bounding over toward his daughter. "Hey, be careful, Dad!" Saya chided as he snatched the device out of her hands. The Digimon dock fulfilled its purpose. Humans could at last keep Digimon somewhat comfortable and raise them longer than ever before, and research made leaps and bounds in the wake of this momentous achievement. The creatures formally came to be known as digital monsters, Digimon for short. Sponsors poured money into the field. It was obvious to anyone paying attention that Digimon could well be the AI key to shifting the balance of power on the net over the next decade or two. Whether or not Digimon were living beings was a debate for another day. They were of practical use now, and that was what mattered. As the money poured in, Tomonori Ryusenji's stature within the university and academia at large continued to grow. End of Chapter 3, Part 4.